Good morning. Good morning. First, let me apologize for the late start. Please stand for the national anthem. This will be done by Jamia Charles and Najee Robinson. Please remain standing for the prayer. We now ask Mrs. Byron Keynes.
A pleasant good morning, everyone. Let us reverence ourselves in prayer. Heavenly and most gracious Father, we come before you to give you thanks and to give you praise, to acknowledge you as Lord and God. Father, as we meet here today to discuss the Beyond the 90 Days presentation of the findings of the 90-day campaign against crime and violence, God, let your wisdom fall, God. And let it not just be a presentation, but help us to begin to apply and find ways to implement the material that will be developed or shared here today. Help us to already start to strategize ways for continuous quality improvement, mighty God. Father, we pray your covering over all the presenters, over all present today, and all who will have a critical role in fulfilling these obligations, mighty God. We thank you for the journey thus far and the journey ahead. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning once again. I am Eartha Carey, Coordinator for the Citizen Security Secretariat. Honorable Senator Iseline Phillip, Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of National Security, Glenroy Blanchett, Permanent Secretary in the Prime Minister's Ministry, Ms. Hazel, other permanent secretaries across various ministries, distinguished stakeholders, esteemed guests, community leaders, and members of the public, welcome. On behalf of the Citizen Security Secretariat, I extend a warm welcome to this pivotal gathering of the final community engagement event of the 90-day campaign to address crime and violence from a public health perspective. Since the start of 2024, the Federation has seen an uptick in gun-related crime and increase in murders that have been associated with the proliferation of gang violence. In April 2023, CARICOM held a regional symposium with the heads of government to consider crime as a public health concern, and therefore our ability to transform cultures of violence depends on the collective efforts of every segment of society. We are truly honored by your presence here today. Your participation speaks volumes above the collective commitment we share to addressing one of the most pressing challenges facing our nation together: the safety and security of our people. Crime and violence are not just issues of law enforcement. They are deeply rooted in societal, economic, and health dynamics. This campaign, therefore, has aimed to engage not just one entity, but the entire community in addressing these challenges holistically. Over the last 90 days, we have worked tirelessly to engage with communities, to include individuals who have decided to change their lives and educate the youths and everyone at large. We have collaborated with community leaders locally, regionally, and internationally, conduct meaningful consultations, and implemented targeted activities aimed at understanding the root causes of crime and violence. This initiative was guided by the principle that lasting solutions require listening to the voices of the people we serve and fostering collaboration across all sectors of society. Today, we will share some of the key findings from these consultations and activities, insights that reflect the realities, challenges, and aspirations of our citizens. But our work does not end here. This session will also highlight the next steps as we look beyond the 90 days and focus on developing sustainable strategies to build safer and healthier communities. I wish to express my deepest gratitude to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, including our ministers and permanent secretaries, members of the Nevis Island Administration, for their unwavering support of this initiative. The 90-day campaign to address crime and violence from a public health perspective saw remarkable participation from a wide cross-section of society. Faith-based organizations, community groups and leaders, residents, and representatives from the public and private sectors came together in a collective effort to tackle one of our nation's most pressing issues. I also commend our task force and other stakeholders for their dedication and hard work in making this campaign a success. This campaign provided a platform for open dialogue and meaningful collaboration. It was an eye-opener as individuals from all walks of life were incredibly transparent in sharing their lived experience, concerns, and ideas. Their volumes illuminated the root causes of crime and violence, while also shedding light on the potential solution that can emerge through unity and action. By taking a holistic approach, the campaign succeeded in addressing crime and violence not just as a security issue, but as a complex societal challenge with deep connections to health, education, and social well-being. The invaluable insights gained from these discussions will serve as a foundation for building sustainable strategies to create safer and healthy communities for years to come. This collective participation underscores the power of unity and the importance of engaging all sectors in the journey towards national security and community resilience. Let this meeting serve as a testament to our shared vision of a safer St. Kitts and Nevis. Together, we can pave the way for long-term change by embracing collaboration, compassion, and innovation. Thank you for your attention, thank you for your time, and your commitment to this cause. Let us now move forward, inspired by the progress we have made toward creating the secure and united future of all our citizens deserve. Welcome, and thank you again. At this time, please help me to welcome Honorable Iselin Phillip to the podium.
Good morning to everyone. Permit me to recognize all the permanent secretaries in the room, senior government officials in the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, especially invited guests, persons who are listening, viewing online. This morning, we're here to end similarly how we started in terms of the engagement for the 90-day campaign. And the campaign ultimately was intended to focus on building awareness, getting community buy-in, because as you've heard from the Prime Minister multiple times, the issue of crime and violence, to find the solution, it really requires an all-of-society approach. And so the 90-day campaign was launched September 6th. We're now here on November 5th, culminating all of the activities. And as you would have heard from Ms. Carey, you would have had community-based volunteers, persons in the community who would have reached out and been very willing to participate in a number of community conversations and engagements, because we're really trying to get the community buy-in, we're trying to hear from the community so that we can really identify what we think the root causes are, community by community, whatever those are, and then ultimately identify what the solutions have to be for the government to continue leading and facilitating in making sure that we are able to establish the root causes, establish the solutions to address the root causes to the problem. So today, we're here to get essentially a summary report of the findings from what persons in our communities have expressed. And while the official 90 days of the campaign is over, the work and mandate of citizen security is really just starting. So there is obviously a commitment from the Prime Minister, from the government, for us to continue doing the work in relation to raising awareness, interrupting transmission of violence, and changing social and cultural norms so that we can become a more peaceful, safe, and secure society. And of course, all of this work is premised and dependent on the partnerships and engagements that we have already created over the past 90 days, but the partnerships and engagements that we are committed to continue doing into the future, especially with the establishment and institutionalization of a Citizen Security Secretariat. And so we look forward to a renewed focus in the new year in 2025 as we deepen and expand in the work of citizen security by, of course, identifying other agencies, other partners to collaborate and to really help us to implement interventions based on the feedback and the responses that we get from the community. And community engagement is a very essential and part and parcel of what we continue to be doing. So I want to take the opportunity to really thank the staff and volunteers, including the community-based groups that really came on board to make sure that they could assist with us organizing a number of community town halls. We're going to hear from the presenters just how many town halls, how many persons we were able to reach and touch, get an idea of what those responses were, because essentially we went on a listening tour to be able to hear from the community and understand what is required for us to really combat crime and violence as a collective, as all of society, where all hands are on deck, and that each individual takes some level of responsibility for reducing violence in our communities in its most primary forms to the most extreme, which is what we've been seeing in terms of the proliferation of gun crime and violence. Ultimately, again, our goal with this citizen security approach is to really create more peaceful and safer societies in a sustainable way into the future. So thank you all very much for being here and look forward to hearing the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. At this time, we'll now invite the CSS team to deliver their presentation.
Madam Chair, please allow me to adopt the protocol which has been so ably established. Greetings all, and thank you for joining us today. This presentation shares the preliminary findings from our Federation-wide initiative addressing crime, violence, and delinquent behavior through a public health perspective. These insights come from community asset mapping and community engagement sessions across diverse communities. While this data is yet to be professionally analyzed, we aim to provide an early look into emerging trends, protective factors, and opportunities for impactful collaboration. Our objective: to share early findings on crime, violence, and delinquent behavior based on community engagement and asset mapping. The scope of work: federation-wide engagement using asset mapping, group focus groups, interviews, surveys, and walkthroughs. Strengthening connections. Crime as a public health initiative emphasizes addressing the root causes of crime by looking at prevention, fairness, opportunities for everyone, and the conditions in which people live, work, and grow, which are the social determinants. The social determinants of crime are interconnected factors that influence behavior, and these areas include the economic factors, which involve poverty, unemployment, the education, limited access to quality education, and the skill-building opportunities, housing, which inadequate or unsafe housing conditions, health services, the lack of access to mental health and substance abuse support, community environment, and weak social networks, and lack of recreational spaces, and exposure to violence. And as you can see, the social determinants of health, of crime, it touches everyone, and that is why we have to apply a collaborative effort. There is absolutely no department, no segment of society which should be excluded. The engagements to public health. The engagement ensures solutions are community-driven and culturally appropriate. The assessments reveal systemic inequities driving crime. For example, community members identifying mental health gaps as a priority. And I would have created a flowchart to give us an idea of what it looks like linking the community engagements to public health. Just in case you're wondering why the community, we would see further that the community is basically the heartbelt of the public health approach. And the flowchart would have shown the starting point where the process begins with the engagement of the community. It makes sure that every voice is heard. And you would see further down in our presentation that we would have touched marginalized aspects of the communities as well. And we are making sure that it is community-driven. In applying the community-driven standpoint, we would be getting that buy-in from the community, and we are pushing the community and supporting the community to take full responsibility of everything that happens. And so it's not a government thing, it's not a church thing, it's not a school thing, it's a us thing. And as we look at the inequities, then we would be able to reveal the root causes, and we would be able to get the informed, strategic, intentional approach. And the final outcome in this approach, we will be seeing findings from assessments that are used to create focused public health programs, and these programs tackle the main problems found while considering the needs and culture of the community. And even in our community engagements, you would have recognized, even though St. Kitts and Nevis, we are so small in size and number, we recognize there are different cultures to specific communities. The community engagement and assessments, they are foundation because they help to identify, and I am intentionally repeating this because I know the model may be new to some, and so we want to start to create that picture. So as you sit here this morning, you can start thinking, where do I fit in the public health initiative? So we are looking at identifying the underlying social determinants driving criminal and delinquent behavior, such as mental health issues, family instability, discrimination, peer influence, inequality, etc. We are seeking to highlight existing community assets and protective factors. Sometimes we see so much of the problem that nobody stops at times, even sometimes it happens to me, we don't even stop to think about what we have. We don't stop to think about our assets. We don't stop to think about what is happening, what has been happening that can continue to add to the overall prevention and reduction and rehabilitation and reintegration process. And so even in the engagements with our communities, the communities were able to say, but wait, this is something that we have been doing, but this is a different approach that we should take in 2025. And we are also seeking to develop a collaborative, intentional, and culturally responsive strategy focused on risk reduction, prevention, and intervention. The root causes, they will be presented by my colleague, Mr. Hans Richards. Community engagement has been at the heart of this initiative. Across the Federation, we connected with diverse groups, including youth, women, and vulnerable populations. While initial skepticism was a barrier, we saw a shift as individuals recognized the value of their voices in shaping solutions. For example, in one of our focus groups, one of our teenagers said, "This is the first time I've been asked what I think should change." And one of our seniors would have expressed, "Thank you for remembering us." So this underscores the importance of fostering trust and active participation. It allows person to think about, where do I fit in the public health initiative? Who participated? Diverse groups, including women, youth, seniors, persons with disabilities, youth, formerly at risk, the Spanish-speaking community, faith-based groups, community-based organizations, Elevate, entrepreneurs, and marginalized individuals. The community reception, generally positive, though, as I would have highlighted, some skepticism was noted. The strengths of the communities. We were intentional in the design of our approach in the community. To this end, we got the community to think about their strengths. What do we have? Because oftentimes, as I would have said, we hear so much about what is not working, what we don't have, what is going wrong, and it overclouds our judgment in relation to what we have. Because we're not looking to reinvent any wheel, we're looking on building. Reinventing the wheel takes time, money, and resources, but if we show persons to start from a place of building, they already have everything that's needed right here in our federation. We have everything that's needed. So some of the strengths that were identified with these groups: active youth programs, they are religious and community-based support groups, and they are strong family bonds in certain areas. They are active and dormant community groups. I added dormant because if it's dormant, it means we should be able to assess what is happening, why is it dormant, and what we need to do, what you need to do, what we all need to do to make this an active group. Faith-based organizations and their after-school programs and active sporting clubs. These are some of the photos from our community engagement. What we would have seen is a predominantly large youth population. As a matter of fact, in a few of our communities, there were young persons who were leading the presentations. We applied the focus group technique in some of these areas, and our young persons were leading the discussions. Our young persons were note takers, they were leaders, and they were lead presenters. And most of them were boys. And even in one of our community settings, one of the members, he stood up and he said, "All hope is not lost. Being here today, I recognize our young people, you need to have your voice heard." And so he felt, he expressed how he felt being amongst the boys, and they were leading all of the tables. As a matter of fact, some of the girls were just providing support, and the boys were saying, "I will lead." And so this is noteworthy. Available resources identified: health centers access to healthcare, schools, community centers, churches, non-governmental organizations, community-based groups and organizations, faith-based organizations, active senior clubs, green spaces, and play parks. Some of the gaps the communities have identified: limited mental health resources and funding for sustainable programs. Some of the challenges: uncertainties amongst community members. And the reality is, you know, sometimes when we hear so much about initiatives to sources that are not credible, and so we start to question ourselves, well, that thing ain't gonna work, and we already start bashing without even trying it, and without even sitting to look at what part do I play in a solution. Sometimes we see ourselves from a point of the problem, but even here today, I am encouraging you to look at yourself as a part of the solution. Historical neglect or lack of follow-through on initiatives of years past amplified skepticism. So we heard some of the communities who would have said, Ms. Collins, Mr. Richards, since like 10 years or 7 years or 6 years or 5 years ago, we would have started this initiative and it just fell through the cracks. So what is different about this approach? The difference about this approach, it depends on you. You are the ones as the community, you are leading it, you are the heartbeat of it, you are driving it, we are providing support, capacity building, and additional resources. Limited participation and engagement, we would have seen some persons who felt, I don't think I belong at that table in that setting. And that is why we were able to create the same approach using our technology, and we were able to have this done as well to persons, individuals, and we met in smaller groups, and we did walkthroughs as well to collect the data. And scheduling conflicts and competing priorities, this hindered attendance, and we had persons who were calling. I think we started to make a buzz in the community, and it was the young persons who were echoing what was happening in the community. You know, we were a part of this, and persons were calling saying, I missed this engagement last night, how can I be a part of it? And so we were able to pass on the form, the surveys to them, and they were able to fill these, so they wanted their voice heard. I remember one young lady, one teenager, she said, as I visited the school, she said, how come I wasn't a part of the interaction last week? I said, well, you came to me, so it means that you heard something, you can be a part. She said, well, tell me how. And so we were able to have this discussion, and we created a smaller focus group we were able to meet with her sporting club. Additional challenges: deeply rooted cultural norms or stigmas around discussing crime and violence inhibited open communication. There were some communities where a person said, I don't feel comfortable talking about crime and violence, but I want my voice heard. And we were able to cater to them as well. It's not that we were not, so just to put it out there, we were not asking who are the persons who are committing crime, so it was not a snitching thing. It was, we are looking at root causes, so just in case, so nobody was out there snitching. They were just sharing what they think are some of the root causes where each department, each sector fits in. With resource constraints, limited personnel, we were very few, and we got so much done, but we got very great support from the community, and we couldn't have done it alone. High expectations and pressure. I know the buzz was out there, they're doing so much with the 90 days, you all need to do more, what is happening? So it was so much high expectations, and the pressures, we were feeling it, we were hearing it, but even in feeling and hearing it, it served as an advocate for us as well. And unrealistic expectations for immediate results, it takes time. It takes time. Assessment takes time. Working in the community, it takes time. Building that trust and creating those bonds, it takes time. Analyzing, assessing the data, it takes time. The opportunities, we continue to build trust within the communities, strengthening partnerships and the networks, engaging diverse stakeholders, as I would have identified, utilizing data and feedback. And we know from our researches in our federation, data is very scarce. And so we are using this opportunity to build our database. So we don't have to look at this. We can look at the statistics around the world, around the region, and make comparison. But we have our own data to work with. And our data is such that we would be providing the data on a grand scale, and we'll also be providing the data specific to communities. So at the end, communities can say, okay, what were the root causes in my area? What were some of the barriers and these things? So it's going to be culturally relevant. Empowering community members. We saw community members stepped up. Initially, in our engagement at Kuna, we would have announced that we would conduct some trainings. And after we got out into community, we had to revisit our plan. And we say, in 2025, I would have had this discussion with one of my beloved community members. In 2025, we will conduct these trainings because the communities are saying, we want to be a part of these trainings too. So instead of holding a training in 2024 and training in 2025, then we will look at the expectations of the community and design these trainings. Leveraging media and technology, which I would have identified earlier, and we are catalyzing long-term change. And my beloved friend here who I met in St. Peter's, Mr. Anthony Wallins, he said, we will not tolerate crime and violence here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We are moving forward into the next decade with love and tolerance for all.
Before time, it was heaven below. But now, it's a vast difference. Simply because those young ladies that get these children, they are not in charge of them. It is that they can't get it, but they do not put up with the responsibility that a mom supposed to have over her children. With me, I remember the days when I used to eat on the calabash. In the big house, in the old, to be room and everything. Once you eat, you cannot sit on in a boat float, walking away in a boat. But I witnessed getting bigger. I said, life is not easy. And so in the home, which I don't know, is the money needed. So I will sell the boat and give mom the stairs. Well, he trained us up to work. I'm my mother. And she was the one who made sure that we go to school, we go day home, and so on. But different to that, don't get life. You will end with the wife for to get the life. You do not get it. And so on. And these are the basic things that we generation lack. These are the basic generation lack. And then you can tell me, a mother who is around 12 or 14 years old, that she will come and say, I can't go in. It's so hard. This God is hard with. The Bible said, being in mind, and you will find a child. But he said, put down something funny. They don't get it. He said, go fall, and that is come up, you know. He said, go fall, but don't put the ball in. He go cool out. And that is what, you know, it's cool. Right? Because when the parents came back, he said, next to us, you know. They got it in here. And that is what we call a country. It's a good country. It's a nice place. Don't take much I love saying it, you love, everybody knows saying it. But then afterwards, you will responsibility.
I want to say that you will be something positive, something call it the hood. The hood, yeah, because a lot of boys live here. And you community would set up a lot of boys. And I am being boys because we have very much respect for me. And because I built a relationship with them. You know, at one time I was witnessing to two young men. And while I hear witnessing, talking to them, telling them about the past and all that.
For parents, we have proper guidance, guidance going on the team. Not encouraging behavior. Not encouraging that behavior, monitoring the celebrity. I mean, the company, not the people.
Thank you for your support, your partnership, and your contribution. At this point, I will turn over to my very well able Mr. Hans Richards. Thank you.
Okay, good morning to everybody. So, Madam Chair, allow me to utilize the protocol that was well able established, right? All right, hold on. There we go. Okay, so the idea of why are we looking at crime and violence from a public health point of view and from an infectious disease point of view is pretty novel to everyone, obviously. But I know some of us, we have our doubts. We wonder what are we talking about. But just before we go into deeper doubts, let's look for one moment at another public health issue that we had 2020, COVID-19. And we recognize that we also had doubts because it was novel, obviously. We did not have a pandemic within that period of time. And so we showed our concern about what it is about. We need information, and so during the period of time we waited for information from the government at that time and the CDC about how we're going to deal with it. And as the time went along, we became more informed about how to deal with it. So I want us to mirror that period that we had during COVID, how we felt and then how we reacted to it, as if we're looking at crime and violence. It's simple. It's the same protocol I want us to follow. One moment. Okay. So my task here this morning basically is to explore an innovative and provocative approach to understanding and addressing crime and violence in our society, treating it as if it were an infectious disease, just as we responded to the outbreaks of illness with prevention, intervention, and community awareness. We can apply similar principles to the epidemic of crime and violence. Imagine if we can identify the social, economic, and psychological pathogens that contribute to criminal behavior, isolating them before they spread. In this presentation, therefore, I will delve into the parallels between crime and violence and the contagious disease, examining how environmental, social, structure, and individual behaviors interact in ways that can propagate in our violence and delinquency. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we are not merely reacting to an outbreak of crime and violence. However, we are confronting a precedent and a persistent destructive force that spreads like a contagion, deeply embedded within the social fabrics of our communities, but we are not powerless. We recognize that when we come together and focus on prevention and intervention, we can interrupt the transmission of this social disease and begin to heal. Okay, so we're looking at the epidemiological aspect of crime and violence from a public health point of view. So we're looking at some very important philosophy. So philosophy number one, we look at science. What is science? Science is basically the research. You find information and to find the truth. So we need to know what is the truth. And so we take that philosophy of science, which is the truth, and we use it in medicine. Whether it's physical therapy, whether it's medical practitioner, gynecologist, whatever it is, we use that truth and we treat an individual. So if I'm the medical doctor, everyone comes individually, I don't treat everybody collectively. However, in the case of public health, we take that truth to treat everyone. So it's a collective treatment. So that's where we come in and we recognize that most of the presenters before me, and even in the past 90-day previous campaigns that we had, we speak a lot about the holistic approach in reference to this aspect and direction in which we are looking for. So everything in life has a characteristic. What characteristic would it take for something to be considered a public health issue? So there are 3 or 4 major characteristics. Sorry, allow me to recognize the presence of our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew. Continuing, so we recognize the characteristic of anything to become a public health issue. There are 4 specific characteristics. 1, the prevalence of the condition, with the concept that the condition can be prevented and cured. All right, so even though it happens, just like COVID, we could have prevented COVID and we cure it in some forms. It's not going to go completely, but how much can we cure it and how much can we prevent it? 2, the burden of the disease, the cost. I remember when we were doing our presentation similar to this from the Caribbean Conversation and Caribbean Diaspora, one of the commissioners of police, if I'm not mistaken, from Jamaica, I think it was, he said that the burden of crime and violence you had, I think, was Bahamas was 35,000, Jamaica was $135 million just for the burden of crime and violence annually. 3, the acceleration. If you remember COVID, how fast it started to spread, not necessarily in St. Kitts and Nevis, but in other countries, how fast it was spreading. So we have to pay attention to the spread and the outcome. And the threats. What are the threats? How many society, how many communities are impacted in a negative way as a result of the spread of the disease, which is, in this case, crime and violence. So WHO look at gun violence. And how does it affect our society? Gunshot victims can suffer devastating injuries that may require intensive and lifelong care. Gun violence exposure can have long-lasting impacts on mental health, include fear, isolation, and obviously we know we don't want to go anymore to the strip, we don't want to go to parties, we don't want to go to supermarkets. After a certain period of time, we get boxed in because of the fear, the isolation, and the difficulty interacting with others. Gun violence also can negatively impact the health of the community, especially neighborhoods with few economic opportunities. Gun violence can have significant economic impact. And so here we go again. Like I said, we use our analogy in this case in reference to COVID-19. We had our agent and we have a host. And what is the agent? What is the host in this case? I will enlighten you on that just now. So the agent would be the gangs, the guns, the gang members, the guns, and the illicit drug. Those would be the agent, those who are responsible for carrying out the act. But I can't take it out. Me alone cannot confront a gang. So we need to amalgamate. So what do we look for? We look for hosts, and the host would be, in this case, the youths who are at risk, or the communities that are at risk. We also look at co-victims. Co-victims are persons who would have suffered loss as a result of the violence, and so they also look for co-victims, and they look for persons who want to take revenge, tit for tat, and they use those. So the host goes to the agent goes to the host, and then they transmit. How is it transmitted? Obviously through weapons. Okay, so those are the main cycle of the infectious disease model that apply to violence and crime. So we look at the agent. We said those were the gangs, the guns, and the illicit drugs. The host, that's the at-risk youths, and the at-risk communities, including the co-victims. And then we look at mode and means of transmission. How is it transmitted? Obviously, like I said, to the guns, to social media, and etc. So now we look at the public health approach. So the primary prevention, if we look at, there are 3 specific type of prevention in public health approach to any public health condition or infectious disease. Number 1, we look at the primary prevention. Primary prevention is we need to find places where persons who were affected can no longer be affected. Safe areas, safe zones. For example, right now we're in a safe zone. There is no crime and violence that's occurring in this position. So we have to find in our communities, wherever we are from, to places that are safe for our youths to be able to interact and communicate with each other and socialize. So I'm going over basically what it is, and so that we could get a better understanding of what this public health infectious disease approach is all about. So I'm just reminding you, just in case you would have forgotten, and just in case I know we have a lot of doubts about the possibilities, so I'm just trying to remind you and showing the direction in which we are going and how important it is and how successful it could be with patients. Number 2, the secondary prevention is, do we have the facilities when there are fatalities, when there are shooting, and also it more overlaps with police and law enforcement taking responsibility for the protection of those who would have suffered the loss, and those who are not fatally injured, and the transportation from the crime scene or the scene of the shooting to the hospital. That's it, the secondary prevention. Tertiary is what we're doing. We have to find long-term programs in which we can use to prevent and reduce the amount of crime and violence that we're having. So that's our tertiary intervention. The role of the community in combating violence. So we know we must have somebody in charge, and we recognize that national security was not the way forward alone. We can't work in isolation. Police, law enforcement, police, soldiers, the justice system cannot work in isolation. And so what do? We decided that it was important for us to use another form rather than national security. However, national security plays its role. And what is the role of national security? It focuses on protecting the state and the interests externally. For example, the external threats like we had with the pandemic. The scope of national security includes the military, defense, intelligence, cybersecurity, and diplomacy. Responsibilities are to manage national governments, military agents, and international relations. That's where we have ambassadors, etc. And we look at the objective. The aim is to safeguard the national sovereignty. And that's why it's difficult for national security alone to deal with the crime and violence, because they have a lot more external issues to deal with, as we see clearly. So we look at territorial integrity and political stability. So who would take charge of this responsibility? Citizen security, and that's where we come in. Citizen security focuses on safeguarding and the safety and the well-being of individuals and communities. The scope is to encompass issues like crime prevention, public safety. And you recognize when I spoke of national security, none of those characteristics were among the scope that I'm referring to at this time. And personal rights, responsibility often involve the joining of law enforcement, community policing, and social services. So police recognize that is not in isolation. The police policing, community policing, and social joining with the social services. Major objective, the aim is to protect citizens from violent crime and social unrest, ensuring their quality of life. Intervention principle. So what we can't just go out, we did not just go out and we start going to communities. No, we had our objective. And we had 3 specific objectives and directions in which we were looking at prior to. As long as they maintain the integrity of the public health identity, we went and we used 3 specific characteristics, or 3 specific objectives. Number 1, interrupt transmission. How are we going to stop the crime and violence from spreading? And one of the ways in which we are, after the 90 days, using and forming our ways in which we could stop or slow down the transmission of the violence is through what we call violent interrupters. Now, these persons are persons who would have been involved in previous activities, they understand the streets, they understand the gang life, they understand the way in which it goes, they go through rehabilitative process, and then they are reintroduced into these groups. And their responsibilities, if those on the left side shoot those on the right side, the responsibility for those of the violent interrupters is to mitigate and try to be the mediators between the families of the left and the families of the right as much as possible to prevent any further retaliation or any further violence. Number two, I was listening to, I think it was with Ebony, with Dr. Woodley, the medical staff also play a critical role as violent interrupters. Non-fatal shootings, they can communicate and encourage the persons who were shot or who are non-fatally shot, that they encourage them not to retaliate, not to take vengeance. How can we assist from a community standpoint? Number two, prevent future spread. And just like COVID, how did we prevent future spread? We put our masks, we social distance. In the case of gang violence, how do we stop the future spread? We go and we speak to the communities. We do our community engagement. We educate, and prevent ways to prevent this continued spread, and change norms. COVID changed norms. As simple as about 5 years ago, we did not have any stoplights. Now we have stoplights. That's a social norm that was changed. We had to adapt to it. So we look at collaborative strategies. That was mentioned by my colleagues, so I will go forward. Now we look at data analysis. So we went to the communities and we asked certain questions. What you think were the major root causes why persons would be involved or get involved in crime and violence? Two, what we think would be the solutions to those root causes. How can we fix them? How can we mitigate the issues of the root cause so that we can have solutions, and so that we can have less crime and violence? And number three, what you think would stop it, the barriers. So if I want to go from here to there, there's a barrier. This is my barrier. What would be the barriers that would prevent the solution from functioning or mitigating the case that we are dealing with right now, which is crime and violence? So during our period, we had a number, obviously we had male and female. So in this bar graph, it illustrates and it depicts the relationship between male and females during the community engagement and the number of persons who were present. So we see that it's basically the distribution, there was equal distribution among males and females. The pie chart better illustrate the equal distribution. So and like my colleague was saying, in some of the cases there were more males than females. So our heat map next, it demonstrates the similarly as the previous slide. However, this deals with the root causes and how communities that we went to. Again, this is just a portion of how do we say in epidemiology, we said this is just a cluster of what we had. So we did not put all of the communities within the heat map. We just selected a random few. So they were randomly selected. So I didn't go and pick Sandy Point. I did not go in the system. It randomly selected the 6 communities, and we look at the root causes, what they say were the main causes. And we recognize that family would have been the most outstanding root cause. And so they would say not enough time for parents after work. Parents are not punishing the children anymore. Parents do not have time to speak. They do not socialize enough with the children, things like that. So this is the root cause. Now I promised some students from Nevis. So when we were in Nevis last week, they were speaking, there were 2 topics we were looking at: crime and violence as a public health issue, and we were also looking at climate change, right? And so this, I think, Mr. Woods was there, very impressive. So they linked both of them together. And so that's what they came up with, their root as root cause. What would be the root causes? So I just wanted to put that out there, and I promised them that I would present it when I come to the presentation. Okay, so moving ahead. So the root cause. So the bar graph, again, depicts the relationship. The X represents the community, the root causes, and the Y. So the Y-axis depicts what we call entries. What are entries? How many times something, a response reoccur? How many, each person you go to, there's a family, family, family. So we had over 40+ entries that mentioned family as a major issue. in the cause, being the root cause of crime and violence. And then we look at job opportunities, which followed second in terms of responses. I just wanted to know that there's nothing at this point to compare. What happens after the 90-day campaign, when we come back maybe 4, 5, 6 months later, we can do a comparative graph to show what the responses were then and what they are now in reference to root causes, solutions, and barriers. Moving along, so we go from the most to the least repeated solution. Same thing, we ask the questions, what would be the solutions to the crime and violence, to curbing the crime and violence in the Federation? And so we look at the depiction of the same parental guidance, and we look at the x-axis, the frequent of or mention, how many times it was mentioned in the solution. The bar graph also, the pie chart, sorry, shows us the importance, and some of us, you say the government is not doing enough, the governments are not doing enough. We recognize that our solution, the number, the greatest piece of the pie, as you, for lack of a better term, is not the government, it's community, because that's where we live. So the government follows, I think, in third place, fourth place, even fourth. So we have schools, we have family, and we have communities who are have greater necessity or greater need to fix the problem, bring the solution, rather than the government. The government is in fourth place. So that shows that the direction in which we are going in looking at the crime and violence from an infectious disease standpoint or public health standpoint is important from a holistic standpoint, is important to be an all-out approach, because we recognize that the government is not the answer to the solution, because they're in fifth place. Whereas the community, the school, and the family stands out above the solution when it comes to crime and violence. And we look at, this for me is very interesting, the barriers. What could prevent us from getting to the point in which we want to get to? So the barriers, we're looking at the depiction of the x-axis, lack of community activities. So that I hear a lot of. Well, we don't have enough games, we don't have enough children playgrounds, we don't have this, we don't have that. So now we see what would be a barrier. If we don't have enough community activities, obviously we would have deviant behavior, because as we say in 10 Kids, the devil find work for idle hands. So that would definitely be one of the reasons for that. So we need to have more community activities, and peer pressure continues also to circulate in the root causes and one of the barriers in the fight against crime and violence. And previously, we would have had a research done by USAID, and they looked at the gangs, and they would have interviewed children of high school age, and the risk factors for gang affiliation and the reason for methods of gang joining were very, very much explained during that interviews and surveys. And so what I did, I made a correlation between the root causes and the reasons for methods of gang joining and the risk factors for gang affiliation. So I correlate them, and this is what I got. So families, again, they said that it's family. If the family is not strengthened, how can we strengthen family? How can we make family better? How can we educate parents so that we could prevent children from taking the opportunities or using that as the opportunity? Because everybody wants to be somebody, everybody wants to go somewhere, and everybody wants to be a part of something. And so if the family is not strengthened, then they would find somebody who would make them feel like somebody. And then we also look at the probability. What are the probability or the possibility of the root cause leading to murders? Again, I use the same, I correlated the same two findings with this finding as root cause, and again, it boils down to family. We look at the probability of a quarter or 0.25 probability that a child, male or female, would commit murder if the family issues are not dealt with. Okay, so the implication, understanding which root cause have the highest probability of escalating to severe crimes, allows for target prevention measures. This can inform policies addressing critical risk factors more effectively. Again, my colleague mentioned this, I will move along. In closing, our desired outcome. In every research, in every new paradigm, we must have an expected outcome, or desired outcome. Our desired outcome, number one, we would like for us to have a reduction in crime and in the crime or homicide in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis to about 40% a year or 2 years. For me, that is very, very good, as long as we continue to push forward. Is it possible? I believe everything is possible. I never have a doubt about anything at all. It's just that what I know that a lot of us, we have doubt, just like I said in COVID, don't let us forget the analogy I use. For us, in this case, between the crime and violence and COVID, we had our doubts. It's new, so we're scared, and I understand. But what I don't wish for you to do is not put your effort forward and get involved. Because if you get involved, we will cross the lines that we want to cross, and maybe we go beyond 40%. Two, we recognize that sometimes people would say, oh, politicians always saying St. Kitts is the lead. We are definitely the lead in this case, 100%, and that's from experience. And so we want to take our model and carry it throughout the Caribbean and if possible beyond, so that we can show that this paradigm do work, and it can work as long as we have patience, endurance. And finally, beyond the 90-day campaign, and that's where the endurance begins. 90-day wasn't easy. We are exhausted, I'm sure. Well, I am. And so beyond 90 days is important that's when the work starts. So we use the results and the findings from the community engagement to create policies, programs, and continue to further engage. So persons who are home and listening and watching, I want you to know that we're going to do it like a census. We're going to come to your door, we're going to knock on your door, we're going to ask you questions. We're going to want to know what you think can we do, what you think we can do to improve the situation, improve the community, improve policies, because we have to create a safer and better society for St. Kitts and Nevis. In closing, viewing violence through an epidemiological lens is key to reducing gun violence globally. Governments, NGOs, and law enforcement agencies must integrate public health principles into violence prevention strategies. Together, we can interrupt the transmission of violence, change behavior, and shift social norms to create safer communities. And at the end, we all want St. Kitts and Nevis to be the safest country in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Yes, we are indeed tired. I am tired too. Okay. At this time, please help me welcome ACP Francis from the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force and member of the High Command to give his short presentations on where we are with statistics. While we prepare for that, there's just a slight change. Please help me welcome PS Naima Hazel with her presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see some of the faces in this room. Some of your faces I've been seeing for 20 years. So I'm really glad to see us all coming here together to finally be culminating, addressing this issue in our country so that we can solve it and, of course, be a more prosperous and successful St. Kitts and Nevis. So, of course, I asked the chair to adopt the protocol with the addition, of course, of the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, who has joined us. Okay, I have the honor to serve on the Citizen Security Secretariat, and today I will be presenting on Elevate. Everybody has always a lot of questions about Elevate, and the Prime Minister is always interested in us sharing more and more information about Elevate. So while I understand that today we've been speaking about the consultations, I have the honor of being on the Secretariat, and therefore I can present in a responsive way to some of the data, and it gives me an advantage because we can adapt the program, because we're right on the Citizen Security Secretariat, to align with our data and community engagement data, also in our community of Elevate. So today I'll be presenting not on the issues, but on the interventions that we're currently engaged in the interest of informing the public and, of course, engaging your support. So the Elevate program is a comprehensive program which is focused on enhancing citizen security through targeted intervention, diversion, and reintegration strategies. Originally, it was seen as an enforcement program, but Elevate has successfully transitioned into a multifaceted approach that's aligned with our citizen security mandate of addressing violence as a public health issue. So my presentation will highlight how the program contributes currently to overall community safety and development. First, I'd just like to break down the program structure. We have, of course, a director, a program coordinator, and a project coordinator, an empowerment officer, administration staff. We work with our field officers and our supervisors. We now have a teaching staff through the Moving Mountains Foundation. We have an advisory board with representatives from National Security, the NSA's office, the police, the National Counseling Center, AVEC Youth Skills, and now the National Training Institute, the Guidance Counselors Network, and faith-based organizations, and STEP. We also now have established a review board, which I'll speak a little bit on later, and we're currently engaged in working with the Citizen Security Secretariat in developing a program for violence interrupters at the community level. Our target beneficiaries for the program are men and women. Yes, people don't realize that there are women in the Elevate program. So men and women aged 18 to 40, also residents of His Majesty's Prison, and youth, particularly school leavers, who are a high-risk group for us. Our offices are located near the gardens on the Bay Road, and the offices currently provide a space for our staff, a training facility, and hopefully soon a space for the Citizen Security Secretariat. Our members are welcome always to drop into the center to address any issues and to seek assistance, as well as for training and teaching, and of course the general public is also welcome. So as I mentioned, the role of Elevate in citizen security, our mandates are intervention, diversion, and reintegration. Not enforcement, which remains the role of national security, as so guided by our Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, and our Permanent Secretary for National Security, Mr. Glenroy Blanchett. In terms of intervention, in the context of citizen security, interventions are the proactive measures that are designed to address and to mitigate risk factors associated with criminal behavior. This involves providing individuals with the necessary tools and resources to change their behavior and to improve their quality of life. Through soft skills training and integration with existing programs, Elevate helps participants to build essential life skills and resilience. So some of our interventions so far, as you know, we've been doing soft skills training. That was where we began. In career and interpersonal development and financial literacy. You've heard us speak of these things, of course, before. We have over 430 persons in the program that were trained. We've now also trained all of the prisoners, male and female, in His Majesty's Prison. We're very pleased about that development. We have to always ask why these areas. In order for our marginalized groups to be competitive in the employment market, there's certain soft skills that are required to reduce challenges and increase the likelihood of success for our participants. We all need these soft skills. We see it all the time among our young people and even our adults, where we struggle in our workplaces with certain soft skills that make it difficult for us to be productive and for our environments to be successful. So we've learned that it's not enough really just to put people back to work. We have to give them the skills to be successful at work. So issues such as conflict management, addressing your personal and family risk factors. Sometimes we be bringing them things that are at home into our workplace. We know it. We all do it, right? And identifying our strengths where necessary. We've also learned that that's not even enough. A lot of our participants are really struggling, and our young people, with mental health, and these interventions are needed. So therefore, we're now developed a counseling program to assist our members to address not just their adverse childhood experiences, we hear about the ACEs all the time, but also the trauma both received and inflicted. I think we don't really think that persons who inflict violence on others have trauma, but they do. And we're seeing it more and more in our members. Their anxiety levels are very, very high. Their cortisol levels are very, very high. And it's one of the reasons why somebody steps on your foot and there's a fight, right? So you really have to start to address these matters if we really want our people to be successful, and we're not just putting things on paper to say we're doing something. We're really creating practical solutions. So when we also looked at financial management, now it's very important to educate. Now we see all over St. Kitts and Nevis in our mandate that we're talking about financial literacy, financial literacy. You've heard about the Aspire program for youth. We want to teach financial literacy. But financial literacy is really important because we have to teach our participants about financial management so they can manage their financial realities with what they have, not with what they hope they have. You know, I have to go and get involved in selling drugs because I have to pay for this. Well, you have this amount of money. How can you manage with what you have so that you don't have to do alternative methods of getting resource that are going to put you at risk? So that's important. It also lays the foundation for our future generations. Children growing up in financially literate households are more likely to adopt positive financial habits, and that reduces the risk of poverty and crime. So by integrating financial literacy into the broader scope of our citizen security initiatives, the Elevate program and the other programming and agenda of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis play a pivotal role in addressing root causes of crime and building safer and more secure communities. These are the ways that we're integrated with other existing programs throughout the government. Through agriculture, we're working on the Harvesting Hope initiative. That initiative is a flagship program under Elevate that provides participants with essential skills in modern farming techniques, practical experience in land preparation, crop cultivation, and resource management. The initiative highlights the importance of agriculture in combating food insecurity, which is one of our 7 pillars, while fostering economic independence. Participants are being encouraged, actually they themselves suggested that they'd like to work together in terms of creating an environment for providing food security, and so they'd like to form a cooperative. We know cooperatives is already a part of the government system. This would help to ensure efficient resource management, maximize their productivity, and secure better opportunities in the agricultural sector. So Harvesting Hope reflects Elevate's commitment to community resilience and long-term sustainability and aims to foster financial independence and security. Harvesting Hope is not just about cultivating crops, though. It's also about cultivating a vision of hope, of community resilience, and also reflects our commitment to empower individuals into fostering meaningful socio-economic transformation. In working with the Ministries of Social and Community Development, we have engaged in the training of 26 family model and hopefully violence interrupters. In line with this consultation, the results show that we have to make interventions at the family level. We already have a very successful program at the National Counseling Center called the Family Matters Program, of which, of course, Alicia is one of our family counselors. And in line with that, we decided that we needed to train more people that interact in the communities so that they would be able to help at the family level. So for the Family Matters program, they work from the level of the children, and working with the children, then they look at the strengths of the family. Instead of us always pointing out to parents what they're doing wrong, I was listening to the older gentleman and just like chuckling to myself. It's always like, you know, we could be doing more, and it's true, all of that's true. But often we point out what we're not doing well, but we never look at what we are doing well, which is a very important strength-based model that we need to focus on. So we were able to successfully train 26 family-based counselors in August this year. That training was led by Director Michelle Blake of the National Counseling Center and Doran Henry, who delivered a practicum training for leaders and helpers as an extension of the USAID Family Matters-based program. This engages the family and the youth, and we will continue to do this training quarterly, seeking the best practices across the region and working continually with our international partners. In terms of education locally, we've continued to support our participants who choose to pursue education on several levels. At AVEC, we continued with some of our participants who had entered, and we just recently had 3 graduates from AVEC. We're very, very proud of them and the commitment that they made to complete that program. It's been very inspiring for us and our members. We continue this momentum by developing more programs at AVEC, which will now be called the National Training Institute, and those programs will be related to renewable energy and targeted at high school graduates. I'm not going to tell you too much because I'm going to leave that for the Prime Minister when he's ready. But the job market, because it's constantly evolving, we have to really create training programs that help individuals to keep up with the new technologies and the methodologies. Our young people have to be employable. They're competing as young people against adults with much more education than them. But the renewable energy is a great area for us to start to focus our young people in because it's new to everybody. So if we can give our young people those skills, they will have they'll be on a level with everybody else to be able to compete for the new jobs. So that's really, really important to us. And that will make them adaptable and resilient in the face of economic change. We also have been working with the Ministry of Youth and Education in a broader context, focusing on girls. We have a program called Cash is Queen, which focuses on teaching young women the fundamentals of understanding and managing money. Financial empowerment can reduce economic stress and improve the quality of life, especially for single-parent households. By equipping young women with financial literacy skills, the program helps them to make better informed decisions about how we spend our money, how we plan for the future, and how we avoid pitfalls that can lead to poverty and insecurity. Single-parent, women-led homes are often vulnerable in this way, so by providing this financial education, we aim to break the cycle of poverty, which is a significant contributor to criminal behavior among youth. So when young women learn to manage money more effectively, they teach their children how to manage money more effectively, they can create more stable and prosperous households, and that reduces the likelihood of those children engaging in criminal activities. The next area is diversion. Diversion refers to the strategies that redirect individuals away from the criminal justice system and towards supportive services and opportunities. By implementing screening and assessment programs, job training and youth interventions, Elevate aims to prevent individuals from entering or re-entering the cycle of crime. This also includes the establishment of a review board to oversee and support participants in maintaining their positive behavior. So in terms of screening and assessment, we've been working with some of our higher risk participants in looking at some of the causes. How did you get to the place where you are? It's easy for us to see where people are, but we never ask how they got there. So using the psychosocial assessments, we're able to really look at some of the root causes and how they see what happened in their childhood or in their adolescence and how it contributed to where they are now. And it also gives us a lot of data in terms of creating intervention programs to assist and address those issues. We've also now developed a counseling program with modules which we would like to implement at the Elevate level, but more importantly, we are hoping to implement at the level of high school education through the guidance and counseling programs. That's where we see a high risk for a lot of our young people, where they're not learning the skills, even coming out of primary school, where they're not learning the skills to learn how to manage conflicts positively. Another program we have, which many people don't know, is we do actually have, we don't like to speak about the negative things, a suspension program. So within the Elevate program, you don't get to commit crime and continue to be supported. You know, we support you to get out of that, but during that time, as an incentive, we actually do suspend members who are charged with crimes or convicted of crimes, and encourage them. They go through the review board to look at their cases individually. One of our issues that we had with our participants, they felt that it wasn't fair all the time. Sometimes they got accused of things they didn't really do, and they were removed from the program, or people stopped helping them, or people accused them, or people gave up on them. So we established a review board so that we could look at each case by a case-by-case basis. If you don't know, unfairness, which I actually saw in Alicia's presentation, is a big issue among young people when it comes to crime and violence. Another area of diversion, of course, is job training and attachments. This is the most important for Elevate. Currently, we are looking at on-site training in areas of building and construction. Training and certification play a crucial role in enhancing economic security and contributing to overall citizen security, especially for young men and school leavers who might have left school without qualification. Training and certification also equips individuals with the skills that are required by employers, as I mentioned, and increases their chances of securing employment, leading to stable income and financial independence. We actually do have jobs in our environment. We do have jobs, it's just we have to make sure that our people are prepared to do the jobs well. And in terms of employability, it also gives them the skills that they need and diversion away from negative influences. So training programs provide a structured environment that divert young individuals from negative influences environments. This keeps them engaged in productive activities and away from situations that can lead to criminal behavior. I know you all remember the boys on the block. When you were in school, there was always some boys on the block in school. They get kicked out of class for whatever reason, and they congregate on the block. This is where a lot of our gang culture cultivates. So we really have to start to move our young people away from these negative influences and these environments. In terms of job attachments, at Elevate Now, our teams are attached to help a problem that we're having in our communities, which is the maintenance of our community centers. So our members will now be attached to maintaining our community centers, which allows them an opportunity to build a lot of skills. Community centers require plumbing work, woodwork, all kinds of construction, landscaping, painting. So it gives them a chance, and then also shifts the perspective of how people see these members, because most of our members really just want to help their communities. So we really want to give them the opportunity to be able to help their communities and for people to see how they can contribute and not just the perception that they're taking away. We also have a youth interventions in Newtown. We're doing a pilot project to clean up a public bath. I don't think people realize how many people still use public baths. And then also to create a green space. I know you've seen recently in Parliament the importance of beautification. We put it in Parliament, so you know it's important. We really feel like when you change where people live, you can change their mindset. So we want to create a lot more green spaces and healthier communities in that way. And then one of the programs that we're really, really proud of, and we have one of our teachers here, Shaid, I know you're over there very quietly. We have our Moving Mountains program, and that's a teaching program that we've just developed. A lot of our members didn't get their subjects in school. We feel it's really important that they get their subjects, and they feel it's important, so we needed to create a tutoring and teaching program for them, which actually began this week. We had our first classes this week, and they're going very well. We're really happy about that. And we plan to expand that program to support the school suspension program that Youth and the Ministry of Education are currently developing. We offer also prison educational support. We do actually support prisoners who are teaching. I don't think people realize that there are residents of His Majesty's prison who actually teach other prisoners' subjects all the time. So what we've done is actually tried to incentivize that, although they were always doing it, that they would be able to receive a stipend for their teaching, which then they are now putting in their property accounts that can be now given to their families on the outside. So a way for them to reconnect with their families on the outside and be able to support them even though they're imprisoned. We never think about once people go to prison, what happens to their families economically. So that's a big risk for us, and that's one of the reasons that the prison population is very important in any intervention that you're doing in citizen security, so it's important for us to be involved in that area. And as I mentioned, the school suspension program, which we're actively working on, addressing the issue of children who are suspended from school. We all know, I see some teachers in here, how you doing? That when kids get suspended from school, it's very challenging for schools. You know, sometimes as a kid comes in, you're trying to find a way to get him out because you don't want it to disrupt the schools. But we've really managed through education to be keeping them in schools for in-school suspension, but we really don't have the resources in the school to manage those students. Why can't they be learning? So we like to connect our teaching program and the suspension program that students that are suspended would now go into an area that's a safe area for them to be engaged in learning, so that they're not leaving school with a lot of suspensions in their record, but actually some subjects. So that's really important, and we think it will be very impactful. Also in addressing literacy, which is a major factor in contributing to juvenile delinquency and criminal behavior. And lastly, we're looking at reintegration. Reintegration focuses on supporting individuals as they transition back into society after involvement with the criminal justice system. Our Honorable Prime Minister has been on us about rehabilitation, I think for the last 2 years. He's always, how can we rehabilitate? What can we be doing to have rehabilitation in the prison? I don't think in the Caribbean we often think about rehabilitation. We kind of put our prisoners away and forget about them until they come out. But rehabilitation is not just rehabilitating people in the prison, but thinking about what it's going to be like when they're reintegrated into our communities. We're a small community. We're 50, 60,000 people by any given count. And really what happens when these people that we all know come back into our communities and they can't find work. So what happens often is the prisoners come back into the community, they can't find work, they go back into their gangs because that's where they're going to find income. And then we have the same recidivism over and over again. So we have to break the cycles. So we're very excited about the work we're doing with the prison there as well, creating some reintegration strategies, including family support for the residents of His Majesty's prison, prison reintegration programs for long-serving prisoners, helping them to reintegrate back into the community with some financial support and also job attachments. We've been very successful and are grateful to the private sector who have actually been employing a lot of our long-serving prisoners as they come out of His Majesty's prison and giving them work. And this is so, so important. So we're really, really grateful to our private sector partners in that area. And also, these efforts ensure that participants then have the necessary support to reintegrate successfully and to repurpose their lives and to lead more productive futures. Okay. Another thing that we did, because it's always good to do the warm and fuzzy stuff too, it's not always the hard stuff. One of the incentives we've had for prisoners is we started a program called the Heartfelt Moments Program. This Christmas will be the first time that we'll be initiating that program. And that program actually looks at prisoners who have excellent conduct, and it's an incentive program for good behavior. The prisoners will have an opportunity to interact. The residents will have an opportunity to interact with their children. At a Christmas party, a day of activities, games, a safe environment, and we have a few surprises. I don't want to say them out here because we want the kids to be surprised, but just to say that it's really important because we forget that, you know, when you go in, people are left outside, and we have to be thinking about the children, always the children that are being affected. Of our participants in that program, we have 12 residents, and we have 22 children. 16 of those are young men. So you have to think about how it impacts a young man for his father to be incarcerated over a long period, and how those things are perpetuated in our community and contribute to crime and violence. So, in conclusion, the role of training and certification in enhancing economic and citizen security cannot be overstated. By providing our youth and our marginalized populations with the skills and the credentials needed for stable employment, we can significantly reduce the risk factors that are associated with crime and poverty. This not only improves individual lives, but also strengthens community safety and cohesion, and contributes to a more secure and prosperous society for all. My presentation was intended to showcase how Elevate addresses some key aspects of citizen security through our comprehensive interventions, diversions, and reintegration strategies, all while fostering community resilience and empowerment. The transition from an enforcement-based program to one emphasizing these areas with contemporary approaches are the best way, we believe, to treat violence as a public health issue. And lastly, I would just like to add how you can help, because, well, I'm up here, so I'm going to take the opportunity. For our on-the-job training with participants, we would love if you know that you have a business that offers skills or could do training to help some of our participants, please contact us at elevate@gov.kn. We are happy to work with you to help us to improve citizen security by training some of our participants. And also, we ask you as a general public to try to help to break the stigma through nonpartisan and community support, not just for Elevate, but of course for our citizen security initiatives. We thank our partners, the other governments and ministries mentioned, the Ministry of Agriculture, Social and Community Development, Youth, His Majesty's Prison, Youth, Sports and Education, of course our partners in CARICOM, who have been very, very supportive and are always looking to each other for guidance and best practices in the areas we're all addressing these issues. Of course, the United Nations, through our resident coordinator, Cosbert Woods, USAID, the Chambers of Industry and Commerce, and our upcoming partners, which will include the King's Trust. We want to also welcome Kevin Casey from the Development Alternatives Incorporated, and also the Pan American Development Foundation. Special thanks also to our consultant, Maureen Weber, for her expertise and support in building out the organs of Elevate, especially from a data-driven perspective. We thank you, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, P.S. Hazel. We'll now have the brief presentation by members of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force.
Good morning, everyone. Allow me to adopt the protocol that's been established. My role this morning is to give you a brief summary of the crime situation. Looking at the last quarter, well, the third quarter compared to the previous quarters, which is the first and second quarter. So looking at the Federation data for the first quarter, we recorded 276 crimes. In the second quarter, that increased to 306, or increase of 30 reports, or 11% increase in crime comparing the first and the second quarter. Third quarter, though, we recorded 247 reports, so we had a decrease of 59 reports, or a decrease of 19% in the third quarter. What's interesting, though, is that we've had an increase in break-ins, 9 reports more, and that was for a large part precipitated by a number of juveniles that would have been out and about, causing a bit of problem for us. But that has now been curtailed, so we should not have that problem going forward. We did have a bit of increase in firearm ammunitions being taken off the streets. We had 3 more firearm and ammunition offenses taking place, recorded for that period. Overall, though, number of firearms recorded would have decreased, though, for that period compared to the previous period. We would have recorded 6 last quarter and just 5 this quarter, firearms recovered. So up to the third quarter, we would have recorded at least 13 firearms being taken off the streets. That's a summary of the overall crime situation. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now invite the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, to come and give his brief remarks.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Carey. Let me recognize, of course, the PSs who are here with us, the Minister as well, Minister Iselin Phillip, Minister of Youth, et al. Want to recognize PS from the Office of the Prime Minister, PS Hazel, and to recognize PS from National Security, PS Blanchett, and to recognize those who I see PS from Ministry of Education, I see Director for Water, I think, who is here as well, and all those other government officials. I see members from the Christian community here. I see members, of course, the leadership from the Royal St. Kitts Nevis Police Force. I also see leadership from the Elevate program. I see members of the media. As I look around the room, I recognize a number of you, and I want to recognize all of you. And if I did not, it was not intentional at all. But I want to welcome all of you to this session. We are 90 days ago, I think it was in September, the 5th of September, as Minister of National Security, as the Prime Minister, and as a medical doctor, and one who recognized that the issue of crime and violence was escalating. All of us saw that. And so it really called on us to step up our efforts and to respond to community issues as they should be responded to. That means to bring the whole of society together. At that initial meeting, of course, we invited all the political parties. We had a representative from PAM, CCM, and NRP. In the second meeting, we had a representative from all of the political parties, including the PLP as well. I highlight that to really demonstrate in a tangible way, in a real way, that matters that affect the community should be addressed from a community perspective and can never be comprehensively addressed by any partisan or sectorial perspective, because it takes all of us to really deal with this matter. And so I want to thank all who have been involved with our initiative of really seeking to implement citizen security as a policy response to deal with crime and violence. And of course, we are implementing the principles of public health, myself being a medical doctor, and who would have been exposed for many years, well over 2 decades, with data that suggested that not only St. Kitts and Nevis had the potential to reach where it is, but the whole Caribbean, including Haiti, Trinidad, Jamaica, and all of the other islands in between. So this is not by accident that this is happening. It's happening because there are certain factors driving this in the Caribbean. We knew this. We understood this. But to deal with it from a law enforcement perspective alone will never, ever be sufficient. All of the models that approach this matter from a law enforcement perspective alone, they have not been successful. Partially successful in spurts. You implement something, it comes down, goes up, fluctuating like this throughout the Caribbean. And the data showed since about 25 years ago or more that it will come down and up, but continuously drift upwards. And if you look across the region, you would recognize it. And looking at it from a public health perspective encompasses all of what we consider to be, or mostly all of what we consider to be, the necessary approaches in dealing with crime and violence. As was presented by Hans, Mr. Richards, he looked at the epidemiological level. And I'm hoping that when he presented that he brought home the point of what violence really is. It behaves like a disease. That's its nature. And if it behaves like a disease, the body of scientific approaches to deal with diseases is from a public health perspective. Hence, within that model, you will find the approaches to deal with the scourge of crime and violence. However, it cannot be understated, though, that law enforcement and the judicial system, they are fundamental as well in dealing with this matter. But beyond just the issues of law enforcement, of course, we look at all of the other approaches that are also critically important. And so I want to thank the task force for taking on this mantle, for taking on such a huge task of going out and putting a plan together in bringing the Federation together, both St. Kitts and Nevis, in addressing this issue. I want you to put your hands to the task force. As they said, they are tired. And I recognize that they are tired. Because, as I would say to them, that I would not allow them to rest. Why? In any issue in the community, once the community is mobilized, the issue would be resolved. However, what happens is that when people start to see benefits and results, they become relaxed. And it's when they become relaxed that the issue surfaces again. So you go wax and wane, wax and wane, wax and wane. Just look at our history, you see it up and down, up and down. But we need a sustained model to handle the issue on a daily basis. Hence, we are saying that we are going to have what you call the Secretariat to deal with citizen security. It will be embedded in our system and not just a program that comes and goes, but part of our whole governance system, which will bring everybody on board. And that is the hope that this is really seeking to achieve, and I think that we are on a good path with respect to that. One of the things that I wanted to highlight as well is that the shift in the Caribbean has also been undergirded by this principle, the principle of dealing with it from a public health perspective. And I want to take the opportunity to really highlight Dr. Isben Williams. Dr. Isben Williams, who had been my senior at one point in the medical field, one who had been studying this matter significantly over the decades, and one who warned the Caribbean as to what would happen if the interventions that were necessary were not done. And that is why Dr. Isben Williams, who is right from here in St. Kitts and Nevis, traveled to Trinidad to be the keynote speaker invited by Prime Minister Rowley at the first symposium held by CARICOM to deal with crime and violence from a public health perspective. He has a great deal of data, a tremendous amount of data, indicating what will happen to the Caribbean if we were not to intervene. And therefore, we see a lot of it playing out. But the reason why I highlight him, one is because he would have been warning, two is because he was gathering the data, and three, he was already presenting solutions so that we wouldn't end up much further along the road of escalating crime and violence. Let me remind us also that CARICOM had called on the World Bank in the early part of the 2000s to study the issue of crime and violence in the Caribbean. They presented their data, possible solutions, looking at it from a public health perspective, but hardly any country in the Caribbean implemented possible solutions. It was always law enforcement, bigger police, more strike forces, more special units, more lockdown, more everything. And what was missed was the comprehensive approach so that you can even intervene with strong and scientifically proven or data-driven preventative measures, rehabilitative measures. And so that is why now we are integrating. As was said, we are further along in the CARICOM and in the Caribbean. Why? Maybe because Dr. Isben Williams is from here. Maybe because I'm a medical doctor and I've been studying this matter for a very long time, not just now, for a very long time. And we have the data to suggest. And as a result of that, it just so happened that I'm the Prime Minister as well, and I'm able to push it through. And so we see a lot of the programs that will be implemented, a lot of the programs that are being implemented, setting up a secretariat just to deal with citizen security and not national security per se. I think these things are critically important, but of course because there's some impetus from our part. So we are hoping that the rest of the Caribbean can also move in that direction, and I know that they're moving in that direction as well. Over the last 90 days, we recognize, as was the data, a significant drop in crime and violence. We must highlight that. That was not by accident. That was because you, the community, decided you would come together to deal with the matter. The community is responsible for the results. As I said, I will not make any political football out of the matter. It's important. I said that from the beginning, and I'll continue to say it. Any results to be had, those results would be as a result of the work of the communities. I want to make that clear. And I would warn those and tell those who are working close with me that this will not be, under my leadership, a political partisan football. It is bigger than that. At the end of the day, all of us want to live and work and flourish in a safer St. Kitts and Nevis. And so from my perspective, I have removed it. And I don't think I ever really played politics with this crime and violence. The reason for that, I was informed very early as to the root causes, and most of them are societal, if not all, and therefore the solutions must be societal as well. All must be at the table, and all must have their part to play in order for us to deal with the scourge. There are a number of things that I really wanted to see as we go forward that I'm happy that I'm seeing coming out, is that the participants, for example, in the Elevate program, be given the opportunity to go back to school, help themselves in whatever area they see fit. And so it pleased me when I saw we had 3 graduates. It pleased me when I see we have moving mountains. Yes, that's what we want, educate them. And you use participants who have become so educated that they can go back and educate their people, preparing them for life, preparing them for jobs, showing them a different way, a better way, a brighter way. That is what we are hoping for, and we see glimpses of it, and we want it to continue to progress. The other matter is the matter of the prison. The reason why I'm so telling them we must have a good rehabilitation program in the prison is that in my early years, even before I went to medical school, I studied with a doctor. His name was Dr. Frank Irvin, God bless him. He was the first doctor to have a monkey farm here, as we call it locally, in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I went to study with him as preparation to go to medical school. And the first thing he told me, if you want to know behavioral science and psychiatry, I want you to study the monkeys. So I went to study the monkeys. So I studied monkeys' organization, how they organize their groupings. I wouldn't say society, but their groupings, how they live, to get insights into how, groupings are. Of course, at the human level, but much more sophisticated. So it was almost like an introduction. And one of the things that I would never forget that he told me, and he showed me the data, is that when he was a student at Harvard and he was in Boston, his arguments were the majority of people in prison were black people, not because of anything else, except that because of racism, their societies and communities were neglected. And so he said his study and his research was to go into the prison and start to do psychosocial analysis of the prisoners who were disproportionately black males. And what he discovered was a lot of these black males had issues that could have been resolved, even mental health issues or learning disabilities. And he told me, if you were to go to the prison in St. Kitts and Nevis and you start to do psychosocial analysis and even test people for learning disabilities, you will be surprised that you find them there as well. And so I asked the person who is now responsible for the rehabilitation program in the prison to start to test for learning disabilities. And she reported that they just started and they picked up three young men with dyslexia that passed through their school life dyslexic. And you can imagine the trauma that they suffered, because they would have been called dumb, stupid, can't learn, what they come in school for. Think about it when you have a student who seems slow. And I say seems slow because these are highly intelligent people whose brain was just wired in a way that they could not understand from the conventional learning methods. That's their whole school life probably not recognizing one word in their whole life. Rejected by the school system, their peers. And I can imagine some of the teachers got so frustrated and dazed teaching them, the boy catch the ball. And you're teaching them that for 10 years and they can't understand the boy catch the ball. And you want to know if something is wrong with them. Something was wrong, but something reversible was wrong. And imagine it took just recently that analysis, so she called the teacher from special ed. Well, I don't know if that is still the term, but he came and he did the testing and find it. And right now she said they are reading. One of them is reading so well, he wants to teach all of them who have the problems. He wants to teach them. Their lives are different as a result of that. And therefore, that is why I think it's critically important that we intervene with rehabilitation programs. The other matter was you have prisoners who couldn't see their children. So how can you have a man in prison? Let's say he got in prison for 10 years. He has a child outside 7 years, 8 years. You mean the next time he's going to see his child in a meaningful way is when the child is an adult? How much trauma is he suffering being distant from his child? More trauma, correct? And how much trauma is the child suffering because he can't see his father? And so you create this vicious cycle. Vicious cycle, and at which point you're going to break the cycle. I remember I was a doctor for the prison for a number of years, and there were prisoners in the prison competing to see who could get the most subjects. One of them had 20-something subjects, A levels, all sorts of things, and is a teacher today. And therefore it means that there is hope, and we cannot allow the hope to die. What I'm simply saying is that we cannot give up on people, and we have to make our approaches comprehensive, universal, but must be evidence-based as well, so that we can resolve a lot of the matters of the crime and violence. That is why when Pierce Hazel mentioned about the committee just can't be made up of people from law enforcement. It has to be comprehensive, all the way down to those who are in counseling, the religious, sporting groups, community groups. Even those who have been rehabilitated should be at the table as well. And even some of them who are not rehabilitated yet, you should hear from them because they will give you the information that you need. So it's critically important that we continue to approach this from a holistic, societal perspective, a public health perspective. And I have no doubt that it will work because it has been proven to work for a very long time, ever since the science of public health was introduced as a body of study or in the pursuit of the betterment of communities as an activity by man, a scientific approach activity by man. Now, human beings, let me put it that way. And therefore, I want to really stress that we must continue along the path and fully establish citizen security as part of our governance structure. I'll start to say, lastly, that of course this costs a lot of money. I want to thank the UN and those other groups who are organizations that will become part of it to help us also with the heavy lifting so that we can continue to implement the programs that are necessary and important to be implemented. Critically important. We have seen some positive results, as was pointed out by the police. All of these efforts are not just law enforcement, but I want to highlight the critical work that law enforcement has done. Put your hands together for the law enforcement as well. And I want to highlight all the other social organization groups. I want to thank you, and I think the PS did a good job in naming the organizations for your significant input at this particular time. I think in the 90-day, we were averaging maybe almost 2 to 3, loss of life by firearms per month. I think we're on a trajectory. I think in the 90-day, we recorded how much? 3? I think it's 3. 3? Yeah. So we went from almost 3 per month to 3 in 3 months, which is a 66% drop, which is significant, which is beyond what you do in statistics. It's beyond the margin of error. If you look at statistics, they have a margin of error. That means you can be plus or minus, right or wrong, however you want to do it. Just put it in simple terms. But 66% drop is significantly outside of the margin of error, which means that something significantly positive occurred. And we must not allow that to go unnoticed. It means that society responded and society derived the result that it wanted. I want to say that we have to continue to thrive, because each loss of life is a significant loss. Each life is precious. Each loss of life is a significant loss. And so I don't like to talk about life in statistical terms, because we're talking about real people, real families, real communities. And therefore, as much as possible, we have to work to eliminate this from our society. And the society determines what it eliminates and what it does not eliminate, because the issue is a societal issue. And so let us continue to work hard and smart and intelligently to implement these principles so that they can continue to redound in the benefits for all of our people. Let us never ever start to think that, oh, that person who dies is a gang member. No. That's a human being with a family, friends, maybe children. They just can't be reduced to a statistic and talk about who deserve it and ain't deserve it. Nobody deserves that. Let us always remember, as the pastor here would say, we are all God's children if you want to look at it from a perspective of through the religious ends. If you don't believe in religion, we are all human beings and we are all equal, because all of us will die and death is the leveler. And if you believe in society and the whole of society, all of us are equal, and it's a fact. All the differences we look for are man invented and created. Really and truly, we are all one human family. So let us think of those who are at risk as being equal to us and a part of us, and we should do our part to give them the best opportunity as well. And that is why citizen security, beyond just national security, is critically important, so that once and for all, we end this up and down, with a trajectory to up, so that we can create the society that we all desire for ourselves, our family, our friends, and the generations to come. I lastly say thank you to all who have participated, and those who have not participated, we invite you to participate. We can do this as a society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the Honorable Prime Minister. I would like everyone to repeat these two simple words with me, and as simple as they may sound, they are very powerful. We're going to say it 3 times. Holistic approach.
Holistic approach.
Holistic approach. Holistic approach. Thank you. That's how we are going to be hands-on in fighting what we have in front of us. At this time, we are going to invite 3 persons to stand if everyone is here. When we started this journey, along the way we spoke about frameworks, being creative, involving everyone, including the youths and persons within the community. And we thought about creating a logo and a slang during the campaign. However, it was more of the logo designs versus the slangs, right? So we had entries. We have 17 entries. So everyone wanted to play a part. Even if it's 17, it's 17 a lot, right? Okay. So we had 17 entries. It was very hard for us to decide and the judges to go through several times. But nonetheless, we were able to come up with 3 top persons, 3 top designers. If we have Mrs. Tiffany Paul Brown, please stand. Shamir Allen, if you're here, please stand. Latrell Warner, if you're here, please stand. It was, as I mentioned, it was very close. The creativity, the colors that they chose, the significance of these logos chosen. So it was really tough. So at this time, we'll invite Minister Philip, yes, to do us the pleasure of announcing who the top 3 are in their places.
So thank you so much for all the persons who would have submitted entries. We did take the entries to the Citizen Security Advisory Council for shortlisting and then on to some creative judges. And at the end, we came out with the top 3 who were the persons named, but in the order that they were named, we had 3rd place, Ms. Shamir Allen. 2nd place was Mrs. Tiffany Paul Brown. And 1st place was Mr. Latrell Warner. We have the winning logo. This is the winning logo, and this logo is actually what we will be using moving forward. So anytime you hear about citizen security, this is going to be what you see. And of course, citizen security is all about partnerships. So we're looking to obviously establish partnerships so we can have safer communities in St. Kitts and Nevis. Together we can. I guess we thought the final judges figured that all the elements that we were looking for in terms of representing St. Kitts and Nevis, representing community, different agents, partnership, was reflected in this logo design, which is what edged it out as the #1 logo. So all of the submissions, the top 3, you will receive prizes. Everybody will receive a prize. And so we're very grateful for the submissions and for the work, the creative work of all the participants. But we now have our citizen security logo that everyone will be seeing as we move forward and continue the work of the Secretariat. Thank you.
As we draw closer, we're going to give some time to the audience just to give us any feedback on what was presented today. If you have questions, we are open to a few, but we really just want to find out what is your view on how far we have gotten. It was not an easy task, not an easy road, but together, as I mentioned, it's a holistic approach, and everyone came on board. Even the youths, you would be surprised how the youths were very vocal through all this. During the community consultations, the things that they came up with as children, it would really be something once they start to just walk in those paths that they mentioned in the community consultations. We had 2 youths today. One was my son, Jamia Charles, and Najali. Those are a part of a community group for music. So these are things that we want to also push during our campaigns and for future reference. As we draw close, yes, I'll leave the mic open for persons with any feedback.
Give thanks. Tired, but I give thanks. Yeah, good herb in the medi. Greetings and love to everyone, and thanks for being here at this, as they say, the 90 days for the consultation, and we just like to see that something implement within, reflecting on our study when it comes to history, because even though the Prime Minister outlined certain gravitating data and everything, we're not looking at that level of, we're looking at the aspect of our people as the African people, and we realize some of the clip that was played in the early presentation outline some grounds of how parenting and other things that indicate to community orientation. And so I would like to ask if the moment that we're seeing going forward, we could implement some history levels to our people, because we realize we ain't putting much emphasis on that. We're only using the model from America and the European people, then we need to utilize our own in the aspect for social invention, as we say. So I hope that these are some measures that can take into the activities along with our young ones in particular. Give thanks.
Good day, everyone. I'll say that we have done a very good job. This is a comprehensive plan. Now is implementation. If it requires finance, and the people must know, because all that is said here can't stay here. News items, people must know where the money go. People are asking for this and asking for that, but this here is a comprehensive plan. There's nothing left out. We have done a very good job, but implementation, and let the word go, please.
Good morning to everyone and peace to all. As we're here talking about crime and, peace is very important. My name is Lincoln David Pell, and I'm representing the People's Action Movement. I'm one of the deputy political leaders. I just want to say we were happy to be a part of this whole process. And the opening we made, both myself, the political leader, and the other deputy political leader, Mr. Azad, would have made some statements, and we're happy that we've reached a conclusion. What I would like to say is that the People's Action Movement position is kind of similar because to the outcome of what you have here. We believe, and this is what we have here, crime in St. Kitts and Nevis has reached an alarming level with many lives lost and communities ripped by fear. And that is why we saw it important to be a part of this process, because we believe it's a national issue, and at least we should come together to get certain issues sorted out. We also believe that we emphasize greatly on the importance of proactive measures that tackle the root cause of crime while focusing on safer societies. And the results kind of feature that. And coming from our law enforcement background as well, we want to let all of us recognize that law enforcement or policing could never be ruled out, because not only it might be a public health issue, but there are also persons who would have actually committed crimes. And if we do not punish persons who commit crime, that could spread to a certain level that we do not want. We just have to look around the region. Even though there might be some causes for fighting, just look at Haiti, which is a sad situation, and we hope they get it sorted out. But you realize what happened. Even the president fall victim to a vicious act. And we wouldn't want that to happen to right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that is why we try best to put our hands here and put our voices to make sure peace abound in our nation, and it meant in our songs and so forth. And we want to let everyone recognize that there are certain things that came out here that we believe in. We talk about some prevention of crime, we talk about crime prevention and community empowerment. That's what came out here, and that is what PAM believe, and we have that here. We talk about reducing opportunities and paroles, payoff in crime. It came out in the whole results here. Social programs, PAM believe in social programs as well to address the root causes of crime. Also, we believe in balanced approach when it comes to law enforcement. What I would say, though, I hope you might address it earlier, the emphasis, what I go as gathered, and I guess I thank the Prime Minister who came and going to put it out, that we should never forget law enforcement, because at the beginning, everything was excluding law enforcement. And if we exclude law enforcement, we will have a problem, because we're dealing with human beings, and those of us who are in the faith, believe in Jesus Christ, we realize certain things. And that is why we have to emphasize. Let me go to my good friend, the first speaker. Even when it comes to the body, I'm not going to be long, I'm going to finish. Even when it comes to the body have a defense system. And the police duty is for that, the protection of life and property. And we should never forget that. So even though we have that, the body defense mechanisms must kick in. And we have the Prime Minister who is a medical doctor as well, and we know, even though the medication is given, the body still have a natural way of healing itself. So that is what we have to put to our people, that our people must play an important part, and that includes the parents, as we bring out here, to make sure, instill good discipline at a very tender age. Because I hope the program will have something to deal with primary schools, because that's where it starts, right there. And I just wanted to thank you very much. And the People's Action Movement was more than happy to be a part of the whole process to make St. Kitts and Nevis the safest place. Thank you very much. God bless you all. God bless St. Kitts and Nevis. Peace be to us.
So just to respond to the representative from the People's Action Movement, there are two researches that would take place from next year. One would be the primary school to find out what are the root causes for the deviant behaviors. Because we went mainly to adults, so now we're going to approach the primary school children. And two, we're going to His Majesty's residence. So we're going to find out, because doing research, we recognize that when females are pregnant based on their addiction, it affects the cognition of the individuals from an early age. So it's difficult if they're not taught to deal with conflict, they become very conflictive. So we are going to also do a research and find out the history of persons who would have been involved in crime and violence and compare them to persons who are not involved in crime and violence in terms of the prenatal care of the parent during that period, and see how we can create programs and measures so that even if we have persons who are addicted, the institute will find ways to deal with the addiction through education, obviously. So I just wanted to put out there.
I thank everyone for your suggestions and your questions. Just to add to my colleague, the police was involved in some of the community engagements. In St. Peter's, they were actively engaged, and another community, what happened is, based on the community and the relationship between the police, it was strategic that police did not participate actively. As a matter of fact, in our engagements in the community, we saw the High Command executing a walkthrough in Newtown, because that was some of the feedback that we gathered in the conversations with the community, and the High Command were able to execute a walkthrough, and they got positive feedback. Also, in relation to the police, we did not exclude you at all. One of our questions for our community members who would have engaged in the community engagements, it's a question, what can the police do? What would they like to see the police do more of? What have the police been doing, in your opinion? So you were not excluded at all. What happened is the data was showing that the community's response is family and the community itself. So that you were not excluded. So thank you so much.
Anyone else?
The gentleman asked me if I wanted to respond. I just want to thank you very much, but also the police is the best friend of the community. If you are a law-abiding person, you are the best friend. And however, I will want to use this opportunity, not because I'm no longer in the police force, but I want us to understand, without the police, we will have a problem. And I would like to encourage, and the Prime Minister is here as well, and the Minister, the PSC National Security. I don't know if you all remember, the police going to schools played a very important role. Not only about crime prevention, but crossing of the roads and these things. And if that could be done again, as often as possible, I think that in itself, because that is like community-based policing, and all the things that we're talking here, the people, the younger persons will see the police in a different light, because a lot of young persons only see the police as locking up, and not seeing the police as a friend who can keep them away from what we mentioned, persons who want to encourage them to get into bad behavior. The more you're around someone or something, the more you feel comfortable and feel a part of. So I would just like to want to just say that with the PS here, to encourage that will happen, and you will see a different thing. And we will have more persons from St. Kitts and Nevis who want to be police officers. Thank you.
If I may add, or if I could respond to what you're saying, We do have the National Intervention Team that has been actively involved in the various communities. We do have other police officers that are also going out into the communities. As recent as last night, we had a public speaking competition at the Deer Bay Police Station, and the reason was for to start developing skills. Like public speaking, it may seem easy, but trust me, to speak to the public is something that can be mind-boggling for some persons. So we are actively working with the police to train them in many areas, and out of that competition, they were able to expand or able to show us, so to say, weaknesses that we need to work on to get them actively more involved in the communities.
Yes, good day, everyone. Thank you. Coordinator, she answered the question to your response, sorry. In addition to that, I see the NSA here at the back, Dr. Rollins. Recently, he conducted some training for, in community policing for the officers of the police force. So, yes, your observation is a good one, but to assure you that those measures are being put in place. However, I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for his visionary leadership. The concept of tackling crime and violence as a public health issue has been espoused some time, but the Prime Minister, in his own deliberation, decided to run with that concept to our own unique experience here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so, some months ago, he shared that vision with us and created the Citizenship for Security Secretariat and put on board some very talented individuals. Honorable Minister Iselin Phillip, Force Personnel Officer Carey, Ms. Collins, Hans Richards, along with members from Elevate, and so on. That committee ran with that concept. And this 90-day campaign also was a recommendation by Special Advisor Austin Edinburgh. And so we believed in the Prime Minister's vision. And so what you're seeing here today is a manifestation of that vision and leadership by the Prime Minister, and we are already seeing results. But as the Prime Minister said, there must be a sustained effort, and so former Commissioner of Police, this is not the end. Yes, implementation is key, and we are committed to making St. Kitts and Nevis a safer place to live. So I want to thank all those who were engaged in the process, and I am very hopeful, very optimistic that we are going to get this thing under control. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, my apologies, good afternoon. My name is Leslie Joseph. I have the privilege of being the Public Relations Officer for the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, and also the Communications Officer for the Ministry of National Security. Permit me to just add on a bit to what our Force Personnel Officer, Ms. Carey, and PS Blanchett would have said. The police has far more social programs than any other part of government. It's not just the National Intervention Team and the community walkthroughs. There's also the Officer School Liaison Program. There was the MAGIC program. There are so many programs that the police have. They also have sports clubs, before I forget those. Police spend a lot of time in our schools, a lot. A lot. It's actually to the point where it worries me, and they can tell you, ACP Francis is right here. I've expressed many times that we need to do something, we need to say something to other ministries to get them involved, because police is doing more social work than police work, sometimes, in a lot of cases. So they're always on the ground, burning down their shoes at these schools. Back and forth, talking with the kids, they're running the programs, everything, they're there. I can tell you that for a fact. Now, to speak to this initiative, finally, I can take a big sigh of relief. Minister Phillip can tell you, she and I have had conversations on the topic of crime being approached from a holistic community approach, because even before I was working with the police, I could see very clearly that law enforcement alone can't stop crime. Law enforcement only gets involved after a crime has occurred or has been committed. And my biggest concern was that we were not doing enough to predict, to preempt, or to even understand why a lot of this was happening. I remember some years ago, it's almost 10 years, when I was working at Kiss FM, and a Dr. Chaitan had come in to work with the police. I remember very distinctly when he was talking about the program that they were going to be creating to work with communities. I spoke with the then police commissioner directly via WhatsApp, and I said to him, whatever program you're starting, please understand that it is not a one-size-fits-all. We may be a small country, but every single community has its own microculture, and that has to be acknowledged, it has to be respected, it has to be, whatever you're doing, it has to be adapted for the people and where they're living. I was so excited, looking forward to see if that was going to happen, but here we are today. Not to say that everything they did was a complete failure, but here we are today. I was very pleased to see in the data that family was the biggest issue, and I've known that for quite some time. I've heard a lot of talk about the family structure being broken down. It's this, it's that, it's not what it used to be. Well, let me tell you now, it will never go back to what it used to be. I am hoping that we are approaching all of our research and data analysis with this project from an open mind, because we have many more types of families now. And what matters is not who the family is comprised of, but the outcome, the human product that the family produces. So I'm really hoping that we're focusing on the quality of upbringing, of parenting, of discipline. I heard a lot about punishment, but not about discipline. They're not the same. About communication, conflict resolution, tolerance, all of these things. I'm really looking forward to hearing about all of this. I'm looking forward to the research. I'm very, very, very happy about this program. My face might not show it, but I'm one of the people with 2 learning disabilities, ADHD and autism. So I can relate to quite a lot of this. Thank you all so very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you. You're often silent, but I can see that. Silent, but not still. I appreciate everything and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. As we close this final community engagement and consultation following the 90-day campaign to address crime and violence from a public health perspective, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our deepest gratitude to everyone who made this initiative a resounding success. First and foremost, I would like to extend heartfelt thanks to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis for birthing the Citizen Security Secretariat to address these areas of concern and for taking the extra step to secure a safer federation. A huge thank you to the Task Force Committee, the Core Committee, and the staff at the PMO's office for their unwavering support and dedication to the campaign and the Secretariat on whole. Your hard work and commitment to this cause have been instrumental in driving meaningful change. A special thank you to the CDOs, Mrs. Pemberton and Mr. Williams, who so ably assisted the task force with conducting community consultations. Your expertise and facilitation skills allowed for open, transparent, and productive conversations. To Jamia Charles and Najali Wilkinson, we deeply appreciate your beautiful music selection of the national anthem, which set the tone for our event today. Additionally, we thank Mrs. Byron Keynes for invoking God's blessings and reminding us that the strength and unity that faith brings to our work. We also acknowledge and thank all the community leaders and the Seventh-day Adventist Church for their invaluable collaboration, as it added so much valuable insight as we wrapped up the community consultation. We also thank Dr. Dottins, who is a pioneer in his field, and expertise was very relevant to what we are going through. We thank you for joining us and lending international perspective to this initiative. I would like to thank Mr. Andy from the Spanish community who brought his people to our people. It shows that we are including everyone. Special thanks to the Nevis Island Administration for their warm invite and generous support with the consultation that was held on Nevis and for allowing us to impart knowledge to the students during the youth forum. Your hospitality and encouragement allowed us to extend the campaign's impact across the Federation. We also like to thank the Nevis Christian Council for their special invite to lead their Keswick retreat and engage with their church members and also the communities. Thanks to the United Nations, USAID, and all the other presenters from the previous consultations. Finally, to every stakeholder and every individual who played a pivotal role in ensuring the success of the 90-day campaign. Thank you for your contribution, and we look for further collaboration in the future. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Agree. Okay. After the prayer by Mrs. Byron Keynes, please feel free to enjoy some of our refreshments on the outside.
Let us stand for a moment of prayer. Heavenly and most gracious Father, we thank you for the time spent here today as we were informed with the findings from the 90-day campaign. God, we realize this is just a first step. It has given us baseline data to work with, mighty God. And so as we move forward, again, I reiterate, mighty God, give us the strategies, the wisdom for the implementation, for the strategies, the activities, the collaboration that will be necessary moving forward. Let your hands rest on this campaign. Let your hands rest on this effort, mighty God, to ensure a safer and healthier nation. We give you praise and thanks for everyone who would have shared, everyone who would have participated in the campaign, and we ask that we just continue with the same momentum moving forward, even more elevated as we map out the next steps. All these we ask in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.